everybody. Today I am going to be altering this light bulb that I picked up at Hobby Lobby. I think there was a couple sizes. I think this one is about 5 inches and the top comes off, and in a little bit you'll see that there's a little cap on there, and I just kind of took that off to be able to put in a wire so that I can have the butterfly standing coming out of the light bulb. So I am prepping the light bulb with some gesso. This is the heavy gesso from Prima. It's really thick and perfect for this type of project, and it covers the whole thing very well. So I did need to flip it upside down, so I took the top off and I needed to get the bottom really well, because as I was spinning it, it started, the gesso started coming off, so I needed to flip it over and just paint the bottom. And after that dries, I am adding a generous amount of texture paste, the Crackle paste, the white one. And I love this. You know, if you've watched my videos, you know that I use this probably on 80% of my projects, and it just adds a ton of texture and interest to your project. So again, I'm just adding a nice coat of that. And then once that dries completely, you're going to see here, that's a little cap that I was talking about, and it just came off, and I was actually really surprised. And it ended up being perfect, because I was thinking that maybe my husband was going to have to drill a hole into the top of the light bulb, or I don't know, I didn't know exactly how I was going to achieve the look. But I'm glad that I figured out that the little cap comes off. So this is a Artifacts and Relics butterfly set. Prima used to make these, and I think they're still available through Sandra Everson. I'm not 100% sure, but I will definitely link down below where you can find these. Alright, you saw that I had the wire and then the wood piece. It is connected originally, but I heated up the wood piece so that the glue would melt, and then that way I could just pull out that wire piece and then use it inside of the light bulb. So I just shove a bunch of the packaging material that was inside of the box to protect the resin pieces, and then that way I can just kind of poke in that wire piece, and it's really sturdy. It's not like a flimsy wire. It's really sturdy to hold up that butterfly. And I should have used some E6000. I just couldn't find it anywhere, but I do suggest using something along those lines like E6000. So I'm just screwing back on the top and just kind of seeing how that is going to go, and it was still a little bit wobbly for me. So what I did was I took some more of that packaging stuff and I'm shoving it inside, and then just kind of placing it around the wire piece, and then that way it will secure it and it won't wobble. So I am now using some 3D matte gel because I'm going to add some art stones. And I'm going to be adding the mega art stones and the regular art stones, not the mini art stones. And I am just randomly kind of putting the 3D matte gel where I think I want it, and you know, I kind of play around where I want all of those art stones to be, and it gets pretty messy. I love the effect of the art stones, but I hate how much they just go everywhere, and honestly it is a little bit tedious to try to get them to stick sometimes. I still have not found the perfect way to get these to stick, but I just work at it, and then it just ends up working out. So you just gotta, if you have trouble with these, just keep at it, keep adding the gel and then the art stones, and eventually you'll have enough where you want them. So again, what I did was I added the 3D matte gel, and then I'm just sprinkling on the art stones and then pressing them down in that gel. So I add a pretty thick layer of that gel onto the bottle, and then I'm just again sprinkling it on where the gel is, and then I'll take my paintbrush and try to adhere some that way, and it just kind of ends up being a mess, but I just keep at it and eventually I get the look that I want. So after all of the art stones are adhered and pretty much dried, I added a little tiny resin frame, and it gets covered up a lot of it in the end, but I love how it just kind of peeks out and gives my project some interest and texture. And now I'm adding some seashells, and these I got from Amazon. They're just little tiny seashells. I love the texture it gives my project, and I'm just kind of randomly placing them here and there. After my seashells are adhered down, I am adding some Crackle paste, and not really, being too particular or anything, just kind of brushing some on here and there, adding some to the seashells, to the frame, to the art stones, just to get a little bit more texture on my project. This is one of those pieces from the IOD molds when I do them, a bunch at a time, and then I have in my stash so that I can use them. This is some paper clay that I used, and I will definitely have the link down below to that IOD mold. I love that shape, and it just looks really cool on projects. So I'm just going to add a lot of different embellishments to my project, and I will definitely have all of the links down below to all of the items that I used, and so you can check them out if you're interested. These are from Ingvild Bolm, I think is how you pronounce her name, and they're the Junkyard Findings, and I love them. I am adding a coat of gesso, and I believe I do 3 coats of gesso because it is a little bit hard to get the metal pieces covered with that gesso. Alright, so here is the fun part. At least it is my favorite part. I love adding the color to my projects and seeing all of that texture show up and all of the just different items that I used on my projects. It just shows up so differently than you would think when you're adding all of your different different embellishments and stuff, and it's just really cool. So this is Glistening Waves that I'm using. It is really close to soft teal, and I just love that color. And then this one is the Dragonfly Blue, which is another one of my favorites. Super pretty color. And adding that darker color is going to give a lot of depth and dimension to my project. And I talk about this all the time when I'm doing projects like this, is having your focal point is number one, and then adding a lot of depth to your project just makes your project really stand out, I think, and really unique. I am just going to continue to add the color to my project, and you'll see that I do get my hands dirty. I love using my finger to blend out that color, and then I will add the lime wedge, which is another one of my favorites. And again, I'm just going to continue to add the color, and I will be back. After I had all of the color on, I am actually going to remove a lot of it with water. So I just spray a ton of water on my project, and then it just kind of just runs down, and I just let it do its thing. And that way I get some of those highlights in the raised areas, and then I don't have to work so hard to highlight them with the gesso or the art alchemy wax. After all of the color has dried, I am going to dry brush on some heavy gesso, and that just means that my brush is dry, and you could see here that I am just adding a little bit of gesso, kind of brushing some of it off even, and then that way I can just get this dry brush look. And I am lightly brushing it on all of that texture because I don't want it to get in all of those nooks and crannies and all of the texture, and I just want it to go on the raised areas to highlight those areas. That is going to give your project again a lot of depth and interest. I wanted some of the areas to be more white. I didn't work too hard to get them completely white, which was fine for this project, but I definitely wanted some of that color to go away, I guess. So I'm using a baby wipe and I'm pouncing it on to the bottle, and you could see that it just lightens that color up just enough. I wanted the majority of the color to be on the top of the bottle where all of the texture is. After I got done adding the gesso to the bottle, as you could see, I think it created a lot of depth to the project. I am adding some Opal Magic Wax, and I love this stuff. It's so pretty. It just gives a nice little sheen, shimmer, and it highlights all of those wonderful textures you add to your project. So I am using just an old brush, and I use the same brush for all of my waxes. I just try to get the majority of it off. Like the last color I used was a bronze, and you could see that I didn't really clean it off that well, so it did get a little bit dark in some areas, but that's okay with me. If you want, you definitely can use a different brush for each color. I don't really mind that much, so I just try to clean it off the best I can and use the same brush. Because this is a Opal Magic Wax, it will not show up as much as it would if it was on a darker color like black or brown. I just add it to, again, highlight all of those little areas, all of the texture. So I wanted a little bit more green, so what I did was I had wrapped the wire with some some twine, and I sprayed it with the lime wedge, and then with the excess that's on my mat, I used a baby wipe, and I'm just kind of pouncing on some here and there. And that way I don't get too much, because I didn't want it to be, a ton of green, just a little bit extra. And I have these words from a Tim Holtz package of words, and I decided for it to say explore your imagination, which I thought was perfect for this project. I love the little tablets of words and quotes from Tim Holtz. They come in handy so much, and I use them all the time on my art journaling, my layouts, and this type of project. And it takes ink very well. As you could see, I just kind of dabbed on some of that excess lime wedge color just to kind of tie them all in. I didn't want them stark white, and I love how it looks. I'm now going to alter the butterfly, which was really, really fun. So I add a coat of gesso. Again, this is the heavy gesso from Prima. I am just adding the gesso to the front of the butterfly. And then when that dries, I am adding a generous amount of Crackle paste. I basically do the same thing to the butterfly as I did to the bottle. So gesso, crackle paste, art stones, color. So it just all kind of goes together. So I'm showing you here that I use my finger to dab on the 3D matte gel where I wanted it, because I wanted him to kind of be coming off of the sides. And so I am just adding, I go off camera. I'm horrible at that. I'm try to be mindful of that, but it doesn't work too well sometimes. So I just sprinkle on the art stones where that 3D matte gel is, and I do add some of the mega art stones to the butterfly, and I added a art pebble to the center, and then just a little junkyard findings that I used from this on the bottle as well. So it just kind of ties all in together. So after that dries, I am adding gesso just to prep everything so I can start adding all of my color. Alright, after all of that dried, the first color I'm using is the Dragonfly blue, and I love this color. It's so pretty. And then I'm trying to squirt just a little bit out of the lime wedge, because again, I didn't want too much. And then I go in with the magic stone, precious stone. I always get those two mixed up. Again, I'll have links down below to all of the products as well as over on my website. So I add a little bit of water just to let it flow really nicely, and then after that all dries, I dry it with a heat gun. And then what I'm doing here is I take my heat tool, because I wanted again some of that color just to be lightened a little bit on the wings. So I have my heat gun on where I am going to be putting the gesso, and then it makes it tacky, and then that way I can add more at once. It's kind of hard to explain until you do it, and then you'll see what I mean. And it just dries it as I'm putting it on, and it just works really good. So that's why I do that sometimes. And same with the bottle. To finish it off, I am adding the Vintage Silk Opal Magic Wax. Again, I love this stuff. It just highlights all of those cool textures on your project. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, and I hope that you guys share this video. It really helps me out. And pin it to Pinterest, email it to a friend, however you like to share. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys later. Bye!